I'm Eddie Radosevich.
I'm George Stoia.
You're watching Soonerscoop.com YouTube.
Welcome back to the Soonerscoop.com YouTube channel. Eddie Radosevich, George Stoia here from the Alamo Dome. Just got done with a press conference with Jedd Fisch, Arizona head coach, as well as Brent Venables, Oklahoma head coach. Just over, I guess, 24 hours, a little bit more than that, till kickoff here right behind us at the Alamo Dome, Oklahoma. I think that anybody that has watched this, George, knows kind of what is out there for Oklahoma. Let's just start here with your kind of initial thoughts on everything that was the press conference, which you can view right here on Soonerscoop.com's YouTube channel.
Yeah, a lot of respect for each other. I think that it's clear Jedd Fisch and Brent Venables like each other. It sounds like they had some time to spend together the other night. They got dinner together. I think the two staffs met and talked. And that's kind of the cool thing about these bowl games is you can kind of go do those things, and they got to know each other. But I think you look at it, Eddie, a matchup of two programs that are kind of building something. And obviously Oklahoma is a blue blood program. They know what it means to compete for championships and things like that. Meanwhile, Arizona coming up, I mean, Jedd Fisch has done a great job kind of rebuilding that program. But two guys that haven't been head coaches for too long, I think they can relate to a lot of things. And Brent talked about, how many guys are playing in this bowl game. I think he said 70 scholarship players committed to playing in this bowl game, finishing out the season, which I thought was really interesting. Obviously, Arizona's got a lot of guys that are playing in the game. And in a day and age, Eddie, where, the transfer portal is a big thing, guys opting out, going to the NFL, I think it's kind of cool that you're going to see, kind of other than Oklahoma's offensive line, you're going to see these two teams really at full strength on Thursday.
We talked to Ethan Downs about that yesterday and talked about, especially when you look at Danny Stutzman, you look at Billy Bowman, Ethan Downs, guys that have bought into the program. They bought into the culture. You hear Ethan talk about it. He's talked about it all year, really, just in terms of, kind of the culture that is in place with Brent Venables. And that was something that you asked Brent about earlier today.
Yeah, no, because I just think it's interesting. You look across the board, whether it's the guys that have announced that they're coming back for, their senior season, which, Oklahoma hasn't always been so fortunate getting those guys to come back. Then you also have guys that are coming back for 6 years. Jacob Lacey, DJ Terry, two transfers, really, that have bought into the program. And then even guys like McCade Matauer, Walter Rouse, guys that could have easily declared for the NFL draft, but are sticking around, want to play in the bowl game. You think of a guy like Woody Washington as well. You think he's going to go to the draft. Maybe he comes back. We'll see, but he's playing in the bowl game. And that's not always the case. I mean, you look at the last couple years, OU's had a lot of opt-outs. And I think it speaks to maybe somewhat of the buy-in to the program and wanting to finish this season out the right way.
Certainly some rumors, pertaining to maybe Woody Washington, maybe leaning towards coming back to join that party of everybody that is coming back on the defensive side of the football. George did ask Brent Venables about the buy-in today from his Oklahoma Team 129 program and the culture, and here is that answer.
I have great appreciation and respect for the guys in our locker room as well. We do have, again, I think every coach would sit up here and say, the same thing, but the buy-in, is never been higher. I think the results from the season would say that, and this is a group of guys that are highly invested, and several of them in the last 2 years. Obviously, we starting in January had 97 players in their first or their second year at Oklahoma, and but this is a group of guys, whether it's the new guys that just showed up, 63 newcomers in January last year, scholarship and preferred walk-ons, or it was guys that are in their second year or their third year in the program or fourth year in the program, just under a different staff. It's been fantastic, and we've got great leadership. And we've got guys that care deeply about their opportunity and care deeply about their teammates, and certainly, again, what this game means. And again, the whole principle of, again, finishing what you started. That's what you want to have a life that that embodies that.
Certainly a good thing for Brent Venables as he moves into year number 2. You get from that 6-win total 2 seasons ago back to 10 wins and possibly 11 wins coming up this season, or at the end of this season. And obviously that's going to come down to what you get out of the quarterback play come Thursday night. Jackson Arnold, it's been kind of the story of really the last month since Dylan Gabriel made his decision to head out to Oregon. Just in terms of today, this was the first time really that we've heard from Brent Venables talk about his quarterback going into Thursday night's ballgame.
Yeah, and look, that's going to be the storyline Thursday night, nationally, locally, obviously. everybody's going to be watching Jackson Arnold. How does he perform? How does he look? And Brent knows that. And again, it's going to be really interesting to see how they handle that, what kind of offense they run, what does Seth Luttrell do to kind of give that confidence to Jackson. But it sounds like Brent's really confident in him. You know, I think the quote was, you know, Jackson doesn't have any entitlement. He has all the skills to be a great player. And you think about the quarterbacks, you know, that Brent has seen over the time as a coach. You know, Sam Bradford, he mentioned him. You know, Trevor Lawrence at Clemson. You've got Josh Heupel, Jason White. All these guys that he's seen, it sounds like Brent thinks that Jackson has those same qualities. And I thought his answer today about Jackson was pretty revealing on what he thinks and the high expectations Jackson has.
Yesterday, we heard from his teammates talking about Jackson Arnold. We heard from Seth Luttrell, his offensive coordinator. Today, we heard from Brent Venables. Here he is on Jackson Arnold.
Yeah, Jackson, again, he's been around the game, you know, since he came out of his mama's womb and been throwing the ball around since then. But he's got a great demeanor to him. I think when I was a young coach, I thought the quarterback had to be like the middle linebacker and rah-rah and emotional. And as I became and after I coached Sam Bradford on the scout team, who later became the #1 pick in the draft, I learned quickly as I tried to get Sam to do it like I wanted him to do it. Maybe his way's better. And but you know, very cerebral, consistent, same guy every day, puts the work in. Just a fantastic teammate. You know, very highly recruited, very well thought of. Yet there's no entitlement whatsoever with Jackson. You know, he's got the instincts that you want him to have, the poise, whether it's his ability to climb in the pocket, you know, his patience, trust the guys around him, throws guys open, you know, throws with great anticipation, has all the skills that you want a guy to have. But you've watched him, you know, have, you know, in his backup role, he might have 2 or 3 bad practices where you're like, boy, you leave a little bit to be desired. Not as much of an opportunity as what he has now. Now, if he had a bad play, you know, he doesn't have a bad series. If he had a bad series, he doesn't have a bad day. And, you know, he's quickly able to regain his composure and you know, not let, you know, a bad moment really affect him. You've seen that, you know, happen throughout the course of the season, but especially during these, you know, last several practices.
Obviously, the eyes of the college football world, in a sense, will be on Jackson Arnold on Thursday night, as much as they will be on both of these programs that head into the Alamo Bowl. You know, probably the best non-New Year's Six bowl game out there between an Arizona program that is a little bit of an upstart under Jedd Fisch and an Oklahoma program that is certainly trying to get back to that level that I think a lot of people are used to seeing when it comes to Oklahoma football.
Yeah, and I think the stat out there is what Arizona has only gotten 10 wins, I think 3 times in their program history. Jedd Fisch said today they've only gotten to 9 wins, I think 11 times in program history. So kind of opposites in that sense, but Jedd Fisch has done a really good job, and I think that he's, you know, he's earned the admiration of Brent Venables for how he's built his program, and the same could be said the other way. And I thought it was kind of cool that kind of gave dueling answers there. I don't know what the line is at, Eddie, but I do think it's going to be a really close game. These are 2 teams that it sounds like both really want to win. I mean, again, both teams, both players yesterday were saying this is our championship, yeah. And clearly Arizona getting to 10 wins would be massive. I think getting to 11 for Oklahoma would be huge. And when Brent Venables speaks all season about the buy-in, finishing what you started, that's their motivation for this game. And that's why I know there's a lot of people out there that say, hey, it's the Alamo Bowl. What does it really matter? It matters to Brent Venables and his program going out and trying to get a win on Thursday.
Kind of 2 different ways they've gone about it, too, because Arizona, you think about what Jedd Fisch inherited. It was a downtrodden program. Yeah. They won 1 game in his first season at Arizona. They got up last year, getting close to a bowl bid, and you know, now all of a sudden they're one of those upstart teams in you know, the Pac-12 that now will be in the Big 12 that a lot of people will be familiar with. And then on the Oklahoma side of things, getting to that 11th win, I don't think that people realize where this thing was a year ago when you were 6-7. You finished the season under 500 for the first time in, you know, 25 years. There were a lot of question marks about the direction. Can Brent get this done? And all of a sudden you wake up, they are a 10-win team, and they're headed into a game that they could really put an exclamation point on the season before they go to the SEC, before the big move coming up here, you know, shortly. In a couple months, they're going to be an SEC program officially. But here are the answers from Jedd Fisch and Brent Venables on Wednesday, talking about the building of their cultures and just kind of how they relate to one another.
Yeah, well, I have a ton of respect for Coach Venables, both when he was a defensive coordinator for years, and we had dinner together the other night, and I said, how many of these head coaching jobs did you turn down? Because he is at the highest of high levels of coaches. And so when he chose to come to Oklahoma, it was one of those programs you want to monitor, you want to watch, you want to see how quickly will he put his stamp on the program. And I think that's what it comes down to. It's not about necessarily always turning something around. Everybody's in a different and unique situation. It's what he's done with his program the way he wanted it. And you can just see when you take a team that for years under Coach Riley we're going to be a score fest type team, and now all of a sudden you watch Oklahoma and they can score with everybody and they're a top 5 offense, yet they're taking the ball away 26 times this year. And when you see a team that does that, that's the respect that I have, that Coach Venables in 2 years goes from 6 to 10 wins. He adds 4 wins to his, in second year. And then on top of it, it's just the way they play. That's what coaches, I think there's a saying like, those who know. When you watch their film, you know. And you know that Coach Venables is going to have a ton of success because of the way his program and his culture clearly is taking notice.
I think probably the under the current state of college football, the best compliment I can give Coach Fisch and again his staff is their ability to retain their players in a really tumultuous time. They've got, and again, this isn't coach speak. It's a real thing. It'll all come to fruition here quickly, but they've got NFL guys all over the place. They've got players that can go anywhere in the country that are in high demand in the landscape of college football, yet these players have chosen to stay. And so they're connected to something. They've built it on relationships. They've built it on development. They've done it with the things that can sustain, that have longevity in a time where college football has become more and more transactional. They've done a great job about development and connection and just doing it the right way, recruiting guys out of high school, signing them and developing them and creating an environment that the players feel like they're valued and that they're part of a family and something bigger than themselves, and then they play that way. And incredibly as efficient of a football team as we've seen all year, might be the best opponent that we've seen all year.
Certainly massive strides for both of these programs, right? And I think a leader, as much as everybody's looking at Jackson Arnold in this game, there's also another freshman on the other side of the football, and Noah Fifita, the quarterback for Arizona. Listen, he didn't start the season, but since he's come in, I remember watching the game up in the hotel down in Dallas after the OU Texas game, as everybody, I'm sure the Oklahoma fans were rooting for Arizona out at the Coliseum. They end up coming short in the triple overtime game, but it is very obvious that he is not only a guy that is going to lead this Arizona program for years to come. You listen to Jedd Fisch and what he had to say today. They're very high on him.
Yeah, look, he's a dual threat guy. He's somebody that can beat you with his legs, and he's really dynamic, Eddie. And I think that's going to be really interesting to see how does Oklahoma stop him. And they've got some really good wide receivers too, guys that can make some plays down the field. They like to run the ball, and again, they don't have a ton of opt-outs, so it's going to be interesting because OU has their full defense. They're at full strength on defense. So what do they do to try and slow him down? And that's kind of the matchup, right? Because everybody's going to be watching Jackson Arnold, but Fifita is somebody that I think people need to know, because you're right. The next couple years, Arizona is going to be a program that they could go win the Big 12, Eddie. The direction that they're going right now, they have a young quarterback. I think Jedd Fisch is there for the long haul. He's a guy that's clearly, very well respected in the coaching ranks. And I think that Arizona, though, if where they're located, they could recruit really well. They're a team to watch in the new Big 12.
If you are not familiar with Noah Fifita, here is Arizona head coach Jedd Fisch, kind of familiarizing Oklahoma fans and the rest of the country with his freshman quarterback.
So Noah is a redshirt freshman quarterback, came in here from Servite, California, with three of his teammates, and number 4, McMillan, number 88, Kean Burnett, and number 5, Jacob Manu. Pretty good high school team. And all 4 of them came together, and Noah was the ringleader. We offered Noah probably within a month of my arrival on campus, and when he was a junior at that point, and he was committed to us and stayed committed to us for 10 months. And what I love about Noah is he committed to us when Arizona was on a 12-game losing streak, and he stayed committed to us when we went 1-11. And if that doesn't speak to his character, I don't know what does. But he is an incredible preparer. He loves the game of football. He's addicted to the game of football. And he's somebody that not only does everything right off the field, he does everything right on the field. And, I would say this. If you have great habits off the field, you usually have great habits on the field. And his habits have certainly allowed him to be a 75% passer and be prepared and be able to walk into the game. His first ever start was against Washington, who was on at that point in time, a 16-game win streak. And, we lost 31-24, and then his second start was at the Coliseum when we lost in triple overtime. And then since then he hasn't lost, and he's just led the team, and he's a wonderful kid.
Last but not least, George, I thought that this was one of maybe the better clips of the day. Bob Stoops at the 2001, it was a coach's, I believe, a convention.
Yep.
Oklahoma just won the national championship. Bob was there with Jedd Fisch, who he worked with at Florida. I believe he was a GA at the time. It was Bob Stoops that actually introduced Jedd Fisch to his wife 21 years later.
Crazy. And I think it speaks to Eddie. These coaches, they all know each other. It's the same thing like Brent and them going out and getting dinner with these guys. There's a mutual respect. And obviously Bob is somebody that everybody knows. And so the connections are always there. I think it was Brennan Carroll yesterday, the son of Pete Carroll, was talking about the 2004 national championship. Of course, he was the tight ends coach for USC when they blew out Oklahoma in the national championship. But there's all these intertwining connections. But to hear Jedd Fisch saying that Bob Stoops is the reason that he met his wife, and then it's at the Alamo Bowl where Bob Stoops a couple years ago was that interim head coach. Brent, all this, it's there's a lot of connections. Even Seth Luttrell, coach to Arizona, that was brought up today as well. So always a small world in the coaching circle, I think.
Especially here in San Antonio, there's a lot of parallels, just with and so many storylines between Oklahoma and Arizona, and then everything else that goes into this game. Here is the story from Jedd Fisch talking about Bob Stoops, the matchmaker.
So I was a graduate assistant at University of Florida, and back then there wasn't like 100 graduate assistants and 20 analysts, so there was just two of us. And we were at the coaches convention, and my wife was working for Grant Taft at the AFCA. We're working for a company that put on their convention, and Coach Stoops just won the National Coach of the Year. Oklahoma just won the national championship, and it was in 2001. January of 01, I believe, is when the convention was. And it was at the end of the night, we were all getting done with the banquet, and Amber and a couple of her friends were at the table next to us. And he said that might be a good person to say hello to, Jedd. And 21 years later, here we are. So pretty cool story. Obviously, Coach Stoops means a lot to us, and as does Coach Spurrier. And we were sharing that story with Coach Venables and Julie the other night. And it's always a good little connector.
Really fun story there from Jedd Fisch, and I can only imagine. Bob was probably feeling himself there back in early portions of 2001, coming off a national championship in his second season at Oklahoma. So I thought that was pretty good. I've always heard that Bob, get him around a bar. I'm sure that there are some stories. He's a tequila salesman, folks. That's what Bob Stoops is, as well as a matchmaker. All right, so that's going to do it from here in San Antonio. George, just kind of your final thoughts heading into Thursday night, which is going to be a big game for Oklahoma as well as Arizona.
I think it's going to be a fun matchup. I don't think it's not like a couple years ago where you had two programs in Oklahoma and Oregon. They were going through coaching changes. A lot of guys didn't play in the game for both teams, especially Oregon. I remember there was 20, 30 guys out. That's not going to be the case. I mean, these are two programs that I think have tremendous buy-in right now. They're both on the upswing. They both want to finish the season with a win. So I think it's going to be a really close game. What is the line? Do you know?
I think it's hovering right around Arizona -2.5, I believe.
I mean, that seems about right. I do think
it's going to come down to turnovers. It's going to come down to getting a stop at the right time. It's going to come down to the middle eights that they've always talked about. Yeah. I think that these two teams do match up very well with one another.
Yeah, and it's really going to come down to what does Jackson Arnold look like? If he's what we think he's going to be, and I'm not saying we have to declare him great or not great after one performance, but if he's as good as we think he is, he'll go and play well, and Oklahoma will have a chance to win this football game. So that, to me, is the biggest storyline. That's what I'm interested to see. You want to see him go perform well because, kind of like last year, you lose to Florida State in the narrative all offseason, first losing season since 1998. Do they really have this thing head in the right direction? If if you go and win on Thursday night, beat a good Arizona team on a neutral site, maybe the narrative going in, hey, maybe OU can exceed expectations next year. Whereas they lose, maybe there's some more question marks, especially, again, if Jackson Arnold doesn't play as well.
Well, and we've talked about everything that goes into everybody that's coming back for Team 130. Yep. The defensive side of the football seems like it's going to be loaded going into the SEC. It's going to be a long summer if you don't come out of here with a win. Special thank you to Eskridge Lexus in Oklahoma City, our travel sponsor. They've been presenting all of our reports from here in San Antonio. For George Stoia, I'm Eddie Radosevich on assignment in San Antonio. We'll talk to you tomorrow on Game Day.